What if the most important thing that your baby needs to hear from you isn't something that you have to do, but something that you have to feel? Well, this week on Sense by Meg Faure, I am joined by Dr. David Willis. He's a board-certified developmental paediatrician and a professor of paediatrics and psychiatry at Georgetown University's Thrive Center for Children, Families, and Communities, where he leads Nurture Connection, which is a national network advancing early relational health. He is one of the leading voices in early relational health, and we met when I was at Georgetown earlier this year. We had an incredible conversation. His wisdom, his peace, and his guidance is just something that everybody needs to hear. We talked about why more children seem to be showing developmental differences today than ever before, and why David believes it's less about our babies changing and more about the world around them changing. We get into the loss of the village, the noise of Googling everything, and how technology quietly steals the small moments that actually build connection. But the part that's going to stay with you is that David explained why you don't have to be a perfect parent. Only 30% of the time is the natural rhythm of connection, and the repair afterwards is where the real bonding and healing happens. So if you've ever felt like you're failing or wondered whether you've missed your window to connect, this episode will hand you something better than answers. It will hand you permission. It is a beautiful episode. Do not go away. It's a special one. Welcome to Sense by Meg Faure, where we make sense of the art and science of parenting. Parenting is grey and gritty and beautiful all at once. And my life's work as a healthcare professional is helping parents to feel more confident in a season that can feel quite overwhelming. Each episode, we share honest conversations with real mums. We dive into the science with experts, and we simply make sense of it all in very practical ways. This is your space. You are not alone. You are held. So let's unpack the journey of a lifetime with sense. I am absolutely delighted by our guest today. His name is David Willis. He is a pediatrician from Washington, D.C. David, we are very, very happy to have you join us here today.
Meg, I've been so looking forward to this. I'm thrilled to be with you across the seas,
Yes, absolutely. And reaching other audiences. David and I met at Georgetown University, and we just had the most incredible connection and actually quite a parallel journey in many respects.
So true. So true. Wasn't that amazing, Meg?
It was incredible.
We had the parallel journey of, yet we know that the beauty of connectedness between families and their young children and the uniqueness of every baby and child.
Yeah.
How one supports that efforts was like between us, clearly our visions and our efforts. And it's good.
Exactly. And I mean, you actually talked just before we started about your North Star metric. And I think what was quite interesting is we approached early childhood from very different directions. You as a pediatrician, me as an occupational therapist, but we've ended up in a space where our North Stars is very aligned. And I think it would be very interesting for my audience to actually just understand how you moved from being a pediatrician into a focus on relationship and connection between mums and dads and babies.
Wow. That's a great question. And for me, just an amazing journey that just still surprises me as to how I've come to be here. But, starting as a pediatrician, we care deeply about the well-being of every child, right? And we know that, and I knew very early, everything that we were taught in my earliest years was the well-being of the child depends upon the experiences around them and parenting, and then the well-being of families themselves. And so I've been on that journey of listening, learning, and discovering how do we support the well-being of every family to the well-being of their own children. Of course, within all of that has been about thinking about attachment, thinking about bonding, thinking about the supports around families and their well-being, and thinking about challenges. I mean, I've been immersed in that. But I was a primary care pediatrician for 6 years, then a developmental pediatrician, seeing families that had children with developmental variations or challenges for 35 years, then started working in child health policy because I started learning after there was a major report that came out from the National Academy of Sciences that talked about, was called From Neurons to Neighborhood. That was from science to how does this impact the way children and families and neighborhoods develop. And it was a major call to say, we got a lot of work to do because our kids are not doing well. And then in my career, over my God, 40 some years, our children's flourishing is still compromised. I mean, it's so striking to me. Thereby, I've been focused deeply on what are the conditions that will allow every baby and family to flourish? And how do we focus all things we do across wide system, not just the health system, but then the communities and the supports and the informal systems, and then the messaging frames that allow for flourishing outcomes for everyone. So I've been along that kind of a journey, Meg.
That's amazing. So you talk about those ingredients that are needed for every child to flourish. And, on a more primary level, it's things like nutrition and vaccination and health.
Sure.
But of course, there's a layer that lies over that that's so critical, and that sits in the parental relationship and the relationship between the parent and the child. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, and how did that emerge for you, if you're coming from a background of thinking in your first few years of we've got to vaccinate every child, to moving on later, 35 years later, to go, actually, there's something that might be more, even the same importance or maybe more, and that's relationship. Can you share with us how that journey came?
Yeah, well, there's both the personal and then there's the professional, and they go hand in hand. I would say the original work as training as a pediatrician was focused on nutrition and vaccination. And we did, as a country, we did pretty well along that kind of journey. But I was seeing more and more children that had behavior difficulties, what we used to call the, quote, new morbidity. Can you imagine calling it that? Which was talking about children that had behavioral and emotional challenges. And that was my focus area. And my colleagues in pediatrics, because they knew my interests were there, were referring more and more families to me about addressing those concerns. So before long, I'm trying to understand, as a pediatrician and as an individual clinician with families, what are the conditions that allow families to grow, heal, and thrive. And so, that had me go deeper into learning about human development. And then when you focus on human development of children, you can't help but focus on the well-being of their family. Yeah. And then everything is what happens in the relational experience. So that brings me, of course, to bonding and to attachment, which have been always fundamental concepts around the experience of families. But families don't think that way so much. They have experiences. They have feelings. Yeah. They have conditions that make it either wonderful or uncertain or worse, challenging or fearful. And so I've been in that space about how can I be present with families for their discovery of their own innate capacities, their own innate learning journeys, the amazing, what I believe is a fundamental belief about human development is that it's a discovery process. And I think families, parents in the earliest days with that new baby discover something very amazing about who this new, wonderful, mysterious person is with me, and how do I join them in their discovery process, which is to me about a bonding and attachment. Anyway, there's a lot more, Meg. Yeah. I've been on that journey of, okay, so if one really thinks about human development as essence being a relational context, yeah, for every mom and father with even before the birth, because there's the wondering and the curiosity and the fears and the dreams that are a part of getting ready. And then whatever the birth process is, what can be either incredibly, despite all the pain, wonder, and uncertainty, can be fearful or dangerous, or miraculous. And it all goes together. And then all of a sudden you're into this business with this new baby, both recovering. It's a whole new world. Yeah. A whole new experience. Anyway, that's what I'm so interested in.
So you've touched on a couple of things, and I'm going to go back to each of them, from the dreaming about the baby to the birth to the moments afterwards. But I want to go back to something you said first. You started off as a pediatrician and then got very involved in kind of behavioral health, it sounds like, and looking at children potentially with what we would now say neurodiversity or diagnoses.
Sure.
I want to ask you a question. Do you think that there is an epidemic of this? Do you think there has been an increase in your years of practice? Do you think that this landscape has changed?
Dramatically so, in the sense of far greater numbers of children identified as having developmental and neurodevelopmental variations. Now, it gets incredibly complicated very quickly, because the first question is why? And I actually have some mixed sense of, I think our societal forces around human development have shifted dramatically. I think that the environmental influences around pregnancies and young babies have likewise shifted dramatically in the last decades. And I also think that the relational protective environments have shifted dramatically in the last decades. If one thinks about the way our grandmothers raised their children and the experiences that those babies had in the context in the early 1900s to where we are in now 2026, the experience of babies is dramatically different. So I can't separate the societal and cultural shifts around the experiences that babies have in terms of their neurodevelopmental processes that then we as a system of pediatricians and nurses and occupational therapists and others have fine-tuned our observational processes to start defining differences. I think there's always been neurodevelopmental differences and atypical differences forever. I think they're more visible, and I think that they're less shaped into patterns of flourishing and well-being from variations that, are very, very different now. In other words, I think the context of human development is so shifted that it's exposed vulnerabilities that we're trying to fix and address and pay attention to. As I listen to you speak on your podcast about simply neurosensory differences and what that does to the experience of in that dyadic process of mamas and babies and the criticalness of discovery, co-regulation, listening, soothing, caring, slowing way down to co-regulate, you realize that that's where human development flourishes at its best. But if it's rushed, hurried, or off point, then unfortunately some of the challenges get more visible that all of us then took time to address. Anyway, I'm really complicated, Meg. So I don't know quite how to answer it.
Yeah.
But from my viewpoint, the research work that's going on starting now at the new Einhorn Institute of Early Relational Health is looking at a cohort of thousands of children over time will begin to help us look dramatically at what are the developmental forces, what's the human developmental arc, what are the challenge, what are the protective forces, and what are we learning about the genetic forces, what are we learning about the environmental forces that shape what then we see as neurodevelopmental variations.
Yeah.
Atypicals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And what it strikes me when I think about that baby born in the early 1900s and the baby born in 2026 is the fundamental what a baby needs has not changed. And, I think that, and I often look at, neurological and relational development and I go, well, it's just the same. The human baby hasn't changed. What has changed dramatically is the environmental forces. And so, and I think that the world in which parents are bringing up children nowadays is vastly different. We have lost our village. We have over sciencified and got too much information coming in. So we've lost our gut feeling. And when I think about those two things, the impact of a village and the impact of losing a mum's gut feeling, that to me has a massive impact on her relationship with her child, because she's overthinking things maybe, or she's Googling a million things. She's got 100 different voices.
I am so glad we're talking about that, Meg. Over scientific, or also that pattern of families doubting themselves and the sense of the quote, need to know, which is cognitive. And I think attachment, bonding, attunement, loving is a felt experience and a discovery experience, not a thought about experience. And I think that the research is starting to point us to and families are telling us, the feeling state of a relational health, is fundamentally love. And it's a mindful process of being in the moment of. And from the baby standpoint, that's where they develop, where they sense and feel safe, loved, connected in that moment. Then they might fall apart and cry and scream and yell and be hungry. But there's those moments of eye contact and calm alertness that we as a parent experience as a 1 week old's ever so brief. And then at 2 months, a little more moment. And then that smile comes and you go, oh my God, they know me. I mean, within that discovery, learning, beautiful mystery of me and a baby, something emerges that's felt by both. And a mother would say, and a father would say, my God, they love me. Because you feel something back. And there's nothing like that. Yeah. And that's an experience. That's not a thinking. That's a feeling state. And everything that we're learning about advancing early relational health is a feeling state, not a thinking state. It's far less a doing state, and it's far more a being state. So those moments of meaningful connection, how few they may be a day, yet are the moments of where there's the emergence of relational health, human developmental patterns, and the like. Because you can imagine, 100 years ago, mamas were not, and fathers were not, in deep learning moments with their dear children. Quite frankly, their children were sometimes held. They were breastfed, of course. And they were watching, the babies were watching, participating, engaging, being present, listening, learning, hearing, imitating, engaging, participating. Those kind of indirect, yet relationally present processes were key to empathy, collaboration, human developmental patterns that we lost track of because we think we have to do something to have children development. It's not like that.
Yeah.
It's really an experiential process between the child who's begging to become competent in the social world around them and a family creating moments for those discoveries and processes together that are purposeful.
Today's Dose of Sense is brought to you by Parent Sense, the expert-based parenting app that gives you daily support from pregnancy to sleep feeding and daily routines. Take the guesswork out of parenting by downloading the Parent Sense app today and use the code SENSE50 for 50% off. So let's talk to the mums. So they're definitely going to be mums who are sitting here listening, and I know that they're going to be thinking, and dads, they're going to be thinking, gosh, I've fallen into the trap of ticking boxes, of searching online for answers, of wanting to know with certainty of exactly what's coming next. So what tips would we give to parents to say, how do they get back in touch with that absolute basic instinct of reading their baby, of connecting? How do they go back there in all this noise?
Well, it's there in the moment. You can't go back, you go in the moment. So it's in the moment, creating those little meaningful moments of enjoying the moment of the experience. I mean, the world's swirling, the world's crazy, everybody's pressured, working moms are just overwhelmed. I get all that. But there's still those moments of connection, which is where I think the beauty of human development lies. Reading, shared moments of storytelling. When you're changing the diaper, the eye contact and tickling. The moments of it. I've had many moms from whatever walks of life talk about when they have those moments with their dear young children. It's like there's a calm that can come in to saying, this is where I'm grounded, and carving out space of moments of being together, of shared experience of whatever they may be in moments. They don't have to be long periods, but the eye contact and smiling of a moment, the moments of sharing reading at bedtime with a 6-month-old, a 4-month-old, a 1-year-old, those meaningful moments is actually the most important part. I don't think human development requires continuous interventions. I think human development has little moments where the brain, the experience, the baby discovers something really powerful and they want more of it. Why they call us back to want more of what they're like, why they want us to tell the same story or read it over 15 times. Because they discover something in that moment they want more. They drive their own development when they've captured those meaningful moments. So for parents, it's less, it's really focus on those meaningful meanings that really matter to you. Because that's where your relationship builds. That repetition matters. Those little routines of reading at bedtime every night, those little routines of the moments of feeding, and either those breastfeeding moments or those moments in the high chair where for 10 minutes you've got a little time to play together, a little time to share eye contact together, a little time to find some enjoyment. Those little moments collectively add to the whole of what's really purposeful. And that's positive parenting. Everything else, it's like suspend your worry and let that baby show you how much they love you.
Yeah.
How much they care for you. And those may be just moments in the midst of a day of even a baby's colic and frustration, because that's their process of learning how to be present too. Their own learning journey has got ebbs and flows, has moments of striking beauty, and then moments of disruption, and then moments of coming back together again. That's the natural process. Babies are not happy all day, please.
Yeah.
They have moments where they get it, they hold together, and they go, that's beautiful, and they smile at you, and they laugh and giggle. Then they fall apart into screaming and purple screaming. Then they come back together. That's a natural process. In fact, those researchers that have looked at that see the sequence of an ever-changing emotional cycle with moments of quiet engagement. Then it falls apart, and then there's a repair back. And that's probably, the continuous cycles. And our ability as an adult or a parent to match that in positive ways is probably only 30% of the time daily. And that's actually the normative process. So it's like, you don't have to be perfect. Quite frankly, being perfect disrupts it. It's going to go the other way. Allow human developmental patterns day by day and the ebb and flow of emotional content between you that are good, that are positive and engaging, then out of sorts, where you're trying to help support their co-regulation of calm again. That's the natural process.
Yeah.
And I would argue the correct process of human development. And that's where emergence of capacities, flourishing emerge in the doing it together and in the recovery after a disruptive period of emotional disruption, then a reconnection. That's where it all happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so liberating for moms and dads because it means that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have this all the time. And if you're stuffing up 70% of the time and you're repairing well, you're doing a good enough job, which is obviously, the good enough parent.
And Meg, there's another element. I'm so glad we're talking about this. And I don't want to sound like a Pollyanna. It can be really rough. And I don't think parents were designed to be alone. I believe deeply they need to be with others. And who do they choose? As a pediatrician and in our whole business, one of the major questions we try to ask with families is, who do you turn to? Everybody needs somebody. Just like the baby needs a mama, the mama needs somebody. Is that her hubby? Is that her mother? Is that her sister? Is that her friend? Is that her partner? But in real time, who do you turn to? Because I think there's a co-equal learning journey of certainly a first-time mom in sharing her experience, our father, with another who's been along that journey. I think where we've lost large extended families like we had in the 1900s and before, where babies were born into a network of multi-age group caregivers, mothers and grandmothers and aunties and the like, there was constant support and a sense of learning from one another. Now we imagine that a mother has to discover it all by herself and reading books. It's not quite like that. Who do you turn to? Who can hear your story of what you're experiencing and how you're countering your old history of how you were raised to the new history you want to create for your baby is a story of sharing it with someone else. And that we call that narrative building, telling your story to someone else. I imagine 800 years ago, when the traumas and challenges around communities and people, women and men were still talking and telling stories, and they had rituals, and they had, they had storytelling and they had narratives to take care of one another. And that's how they were present then for them, the needs of their dear babies. They shared it together. So thereby, every single mom, I would hope she finds someone she can trust.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
argue is a critical element of her well-being is who does she turn to when she's feeling a little off kilter or needs to just talk about the meaning of this moment of me as a mom where I doubt myself or I thought I would never be a good mom and maybe I'm discovering. Who do you share that with for another mother to say, I felt that way too, but I discovered something. My baby loves me regardless of who I am. And I all of a sudden discovered it and felt it. Because babies I think in the relationships itself, naturally, babies develop us for their needs.
Yeah.
I think we learn dramatically about ourselves through our sense of both responsibility, but also awe and wonder. As love emerges to us with our babies, we discover something about ourselves. Gives us a moment to share about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've touched on two very important concepts over the last kind of 15 minutes. The one being those magical moments or those moments of connection and actually giving space to that. And I guess one of the big risk factors in the world at the moment would be technology. We've all experienced it where every one of us, me too, and my teenagers were, when I was burying my head in my phone, were old enough to say, you're not listening, you're not looking at me, look at me when I speak to you. Your 6-month-old can't do that. And so I think technology is a thief of those moments and is a risk factor. And the second risk factor that you mentioned very clearly is the loss of the village, which I have an absolute obsession about because I think this parenting in isolation is a massive risk factor for families now. And I think a lot of the dependence and reliance on technology, both to distract a child, but also to distract us, comes from the fact that there's so much pressure about being the only parent and the only person for that child that we start to turn to technology where in other situations when we're in a social setting, we just don't because there's other hands and distractions. So I think they're part and parcel. I think before we finish off, it would be important for us to address for those moms who feel like they have made a mistake, feel like they've failed already.
Cool.
And that can come from their own relationships that preceded their child, or the fact that maybe they only adopted a child later and didn't have those early moments of connection, and they don't know what that child's early relational situation or environment was like. Or a mom who's so stressed and so pressurized that if she's not working, she's on technology and she's missing these moments. What do we say to those parents? I know we can repair, but what do we say to them? How do we give them hope and what can they do?
Well, it's a core truth. Hope springs eternal. And relational disruptions can always be healed by desire. And relationship development's a long time. And it's always there are always opportunities for growth, for healing every day. And it starts with examining myself to want to do so. And it also comes from my desire to repair. And that's assuming it's authentic and I mean it deeply in my heart and my soul. Our children, our babies will meet us right there because they're yearning for that same repair. And it will just appear between you. And that's where recovery begins and repeats and repeats and repeats. So it's always there. Secondly, if it's overwhelming, go talk to somebody. Who will you share with? Because they've been there too. It could be a therapist, it doesn't need to be. It could be your neighbor. It could be your cousin. It could be your mom. Because we've all been there. And when you have someone that you trust to share that kind of a doubt and uncertainty, you prepare yourself to be ready to then do the repair work with your children, with your family. And it's always an opportunity. I mean, I had the privilege of working with, being in that journey with families for 35 years. And I was stunned at the power of recovery. That's what actually motivated everything I do, because of me believing and witnessing the incredible opportunity of people to heal, to get themselves through their own intention, where I believe they can and they will, and I celebrate the moments of change that they feel and sense, and watch how the power of healing and recovery for every family is a journey they can find together by intention with the support of others. So I so believe in those relational moments that are authentic, those meaningful moments of connection, the opportunities always to create little healing moments of, hey, I'm sorry, or I love you, baby, I didn't mean to do that, or, can you forgive me, or whatever the words you want to use. It's always there, and it's always an opportunity.
Yeah. And something to go back to what you said right at the beginning, you said it sounded to me like you were saying that it's self-fulfilling, that as you give to your baby and they give back to you, there's this moment of delight that erupts between the two of you. And that actually feeds you and you come back for more, just like your baby does.
Well, I would take it further. I think it's instinctively natural human behavior.
Yeah.
Meaning, I think it's built into relational patterns that are always begging for delight and recovery. That's
Yes.
the only way as any one of us have gotten to the way we are now. This would have never happened in human development if that natural resilience, recovery, and delight was a part of our human nature to be discovered together.
Yeah.
It's just there. And we need to capitalize on it and thereby worry less about it not being there. I failed, I missed it forever, caused damage, all that. None of that's true. It's always emergent to healing and recovery and delight and discovery together. And that no matter where we come from, that's the opportunity of growing and healing towards flourishing. And that's a narrative, that's a trusted experience, that's a shared experience with others, to which our babies can flourish far different than we did if we share that belief with them, but also share it and learn from others. That's the opportunity in front of us.
Yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity because it really does impact not just you, your child, but the next generation as well as children navigate and learn about relationships. So
that's why
David,
relational health, we believe, is an effort to heal our culture, to focus less on the individual and me, and to focus far more on you and we. And that relational pattern is the driver of, the flourishing of all. And love emerges and compassion emerges and empathy emerges, collectiveness.
and then it ripples.
And then it ripples. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, absolutely. This is the starting point, and we get to do it as parents, which is a huge burden to carry, but an incredible joy as well. And I think that is really what the message is today: is that don't be burdened by getting it right. Enjoy the moments and engage with your little one. It's a beautiful message, David. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity, Meg. Be well.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that today's conversation has brought you a little more clarity, calm, and confidence on your parenting journey. We'll be back next week with another episode, same time, same place, and always here to support you. And in the meantime, download the Parent Sense app and take the guesswork out of feeding, sleep, weaning routines, and everything in between.